My millionaire husband hid secret triplets boys from me until I saw the boys, and was stunned as they looked just like me, and I exposed him at the gala. You told me they were dead. I stood in that private alcove, my voice shaking with a rage so profound it felt like my bones might shatter from the force of it. The man in front of me, my ex-husband, had gone pale as death itself. This isn't the place for this conversation, Genevieve. Please. Please? I laughed, and the sound was jagged enough to draw blood. You told me our babies died, Sterling. You held my hand while I sobbed. You watched me fall apart for 6 months in a psychiatric facility, and they've been alive this whole time. Those 3 boys out there with my face, my eyes, my smile. They're mine, aren't they? His silence was confirmation enough. How could you? How could you let me believe I'd lost them when they were breathing and laughing and growing up without me? Have you ever had your entire reality shattered in a single moment? Have you ever discovered that the grief that nearly destroyed you was built on a lie? Have you ever looked at strangers and seen your own soul looking back? This is the story of how I discovered my dead children were alive, how my millionaire ex-husband had stolen 9 years of motherhood from me, how I built myself from broken pieces into a CEO worth $42 million, and how I exposed every ugly truth in front of Boston's entire elite at the most important gala of the year. But before we get to that ballroom confrontation, you need to understand how deep this betrayal goes. You need to know who I was, who I became, and what happened the night I saw 3 boys at a dessert table wearing my face. If you believe in justice, in mothers fighting for their children, and in the power of truth over lies, hit that like button right now. Make sure you're subscribed to Love and Twilights with Dr. Phillips because this story has twists you won't see coming. I promise you, by the end of this, you'll understand why some betrayals can never be forgiven, only survived. Now let me take you back to where this nightmare began. The champagne fountain at the Metropolitan Art Center sparkled under crystal. Chandeliers, each bubble catching light like tiny diamonds suspended in time. I stood at the edge of the ballroom in my emerald gown, the silk flowing like water with every subtle movement. Around me, Boston's elite congratulated each other on another successful charity season, their laughter echoing off marble floors that probably cost more than most people's homes. 5 years ago, I would have been invisible at an event like this. 5 years ago, I was someone else entirely. Someone broken. Someone who'd lost everything and had to claw her way back to something resembling human. Now, as Genevieve Hartley, I commanded attention without asking for it. Founder and CEO of Hartley Digital Solutions, the fastest growing tech consultancy in New England. $42 million valuation. Featured in Forbes, TechCrunch, Boston Business Journal. I'd built an empire from nothing, from the ashes of the woman I used to be. The woman who'd lost everything. Miss Hartley, wonderful to see you here. Richard Pemberton approached with his wife, both of them dressed in the kind of elegant simplicity that screamed old money. He was a venture capitalist I'd pitched to last year. Turned me down initially, then came crawling back when my Q2 numbers made him look foolish. Richard, Mrs. Pemberton. I smiled the smile I'd perfected over 5 years of rebuilding myself. Warm enough to seem genuine, controlled enough to maintain distance. Thank you. The gala looks beautiful this year. I heard your Q3 numbers were exceptional. His eyes gleamed with the particular hunger of men who'd missed an opportunity and knew it. Exceeded projections by what, 30%? 32, actually. I kept my tone modest despite the victory those numbers represented. We've been very fortunate with client retention and referrals. Mrs. Pemberton touched my arm with the kind of familiarity wealthy women used when they wanted something. You simply must tell me your secret. A woman building a tech company in this market? It's extraordinary, but I wasn't really present in this conversation. My attention had snagged on something across the ballroom, something that made my blood run cold and my heart race simultaneously. 3 boys. They couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old, dressed in identical miniature tuxedos. Standing near the dessert table with the awkward formality of children forced into adult spaces. They were fidgeting with their bow ties, clearly uncomfortable in the fancy clothes and fancier company. But that wasn't what froze me in place. They looked exactly like me, not similar, not vaguely familiar. Exactly like me. Miss Hartley? Mrs. Pemberton's voice seemed to come from very far away. Are you all right? I'm sorry. Please excuse me. I didn't wait for a response. My feet were already moving, carrying me through the crowd with a purpose I couldn't have named. Each step brought me closer to an impossibility that my mind refused to process. The same auburn hair with that distinctive copper undertone that caught light like fire. The same wide-set hazel eyes that shifted between green and gold, depending on the lighting. The same small cleft in the chin that I'd inherited from my grandmother. The same constellation of freckles across the bridge of the nose. One of the boys laughed at something his brother said, and the gesture, the way he tilted his head back, the hand that flew to cover his mouth. That was exactly how I laughed when I forgot to be controlled, when I let my guard down. My heart hammered against my ribs hard enough to hurt. The ballroom seemed to narrow, tunnel vision, focusing everything on these three impossible children. The one on the left was chewing his lower lip while studying the pastry selection. I did that. When I was concentrating, anxious, trying to make a decision, the exact same gesture. The one in the middle stood with his weight on one hip, arms crossed in unconscious self-protection. I caught myself standing exactly like that at least a dozen times a day. The one on the right fidgeted with his bow tie with barely contained impatience, his fingers pulling at the silk like it was strangling him. I hated restrictive clothing in exactly the same way, always had. Hello. The word came out steady despite the chaos in my chest. Professional. Calm. Everything I'd learned to be over 5 years of rebuilding myself from broken pieces. 3 pairs of eyes turned toward me. My eyes. Hazel, with those distinctive gold flecks that appeared in certain light. I was looking at my own eyes in 3 different faces. Hi. The middle boy, the fidgeter, smiled with genuine warmth. You have a really pretty dress. Thank you. I knelt down to their level, bringing myself eye to eye with them. The movement felt instinctive, natural, maternal. Are you boys enjoying the gala? It's boring. The one on the left, the lip chewer, spoke with the kind of brutal honesty only children possessed. But the desserts are good. Up close, the resemblance was even more striking. Impossible to deny. Impossible to explain. My hand started shaking, so I clasped them together in front of me. I'm Owen. The middle boy gestured to himself, then pointed to the honest one. This is Felix, and that's Miles. The names detonated in my mind like grenades. 9 years ago, when I was 7 months pregnant with triplets, I'd spent hours with my husband choosing names. We'd narrowed it to a final list, names we'd loved, names that felt right. Owen, Felix, Miles. Those are wonderful names. My voice had gone strange, distant, like I was listening to someone else speak. Very strong names. Our dad chose them. Miles, the quietest one, spoke softly. He was the observer, I could tell, the one who noticed things others missed. Did he? The world had begun to tilt, reality shifting into something unfamiliar and terrible. And where is your father? Talking to important people. Felix rolled his eyes with 9-year-old disdain. He's always talking to important people. What about your mother? The question came out before I could stop it. Too personal, too desperate. But I needed to know. I needed to hear them say it. The boys exchanged glances, a silent communication that spoke of shared secrets and careful navigation of adult topics. We don't have a mom. Owen's voice was matter of fact, like he was stating an obvious truth. Well, we did, but Dad says she couldn't take care of us. The floor dropped out from under me. 9 years ago, I'd been Genevieve Morrison, married to Sterling Morrison, heir to the Morrison real estate empire. 26 years old, pregnant with triplets, deliriously happy despite the difficult pregnancy. And then, everything had gone wrong. I'd gone into premature labor at 32 weeks. There'd been complications, bleeding, distress, chaos. I remembered Sterling's face above mine, tears streaming down his cheeks. I remembered the doctor's grave expression. I remembered the anesthesia pulling me under for an emergency C-section. When I woke up, Sterling told me our babies were dead. All 3 of them. Gone. I'd spent 6 months in a psychiatric facility after that, drowning in grief so profound I'd forgotten how to breathe. When I finally emerged, hollow and broken, Sterling had divorce papers waiting. You need to start over, he'd said, not unkindly. This tragedy has destroyed us both. We need to move forward separately. I'd signed the papers because I'd had nothing left to fight for. I'd taken my maiden name back, left Boston, and spent 3 years in Seattle rebuilding myself from the ground up. I'd thrown myself into work, into building something that couldn't die, or leave, or break my heart. And now, 5 years after returning to Boston, I was looking at 3 boys, who wore my face, bore the names I'd chosen, and had no idea I existed. Miss Hartley, are you crying? I touched my face, surprised to find tears. I'm fine, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups cry at beautiful things, and you three are very beautiful. Dad says crying is for weak people. Felix stated it like a fact he'd been taught to believe. My hands clenched into fists. Your dad is wrong. Crying is for honest people who feel things deeply. Genevieve? The voice turned my blood to ice. I stood slowly, turning to face the man I'd once loved more than life itself. Sterling Morrison stood 3 feet away, champagne flute frozen halfway to his lips, his face drained of all color. At 38, he was as handsome as ever, sharp features, dark hair touched with distinguished silver at the temples, wearing a Tom Ford tuxedo like it was a second skin. But I looked past the polished exterior to the truth underneath. This man had stolen my children. This man had let me believe they were dead. This man had watched me shatter into 1,000 pieces and done nothing to put me back together because he'd been the one who'd broken me. Sterling. His name tasted like poison on my tongue. I didn't know you'd be here. He recovered quickly, his businessman's composure sliding into place like armor. You look, well, you told me they were dead. My voice was quiet, conversational even. The boys were watching. I couldn't forget that. But the words landed like bombs in the space between us. This isn't the place for this conversation. You told me our babies died. I took a step closer to him, watching his face carefully. You held my hand while I sobbed. You comforted me through my grief, all while knowing it was based on a lie. Dad? Owen tugged on Sterling's sleeve with confusion written across his features. You know her? Yeah, Dad. I smiled, and it was sharp as broken glass. Tell them how you know me. Boys, go find Nanny Judith. Sterling's voice carried the authority the children obeyed automatically. Now, I watched them leave, my heart splintering with every step. They were alive. My babies were alive, walking and talking and laughing, and they had no idea who I was. How could you? The words came out broken, all the professional composure I'd built over 5 years cracking wide open. Sterling grabbed my elbow, steering me toward a private alcove off the main ballroom. I let him, too shocked for resistance. My mind was still trying to process what I'd seen, what I'd learned, what it meant. Once we were alone, he released me like I burned him. It's not what you think. You told me they were dead. I could hear my voice rising, hysteria creeping in at the edges. You let me grieve them. I spent 6 months in psychiatric care, Sterling. 6 months wanting to die because I thought I'd lost them. And they've been alive this whole time? You were unstable. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized as stress. After the birth, you were hemorrhaging. The doctor said you might not make it. When you finally stabilized, you were so heavily sedated, and the babies, they were premature, in the NICU, so small and fragile. So you decided to tell me they died, instead of letting me fight for them? My mother convinced me it was the kindest thing. His voice dropped, and I heard something that might have been shame. She said you'd never be strong enough to handle triplets, that the pregnancy had nearly killed you, that you'd resent them for what you'd been through. She said telling you they didn't survive would let you move on with your life. I stared at him, comprehension dawning with sickening clarity. Your mother wanted them. She wanted heirs for the Morrison empire, and she didn't want to share them with me. Sterling didn't deny it. The silence was confirmation enough. Where did you tell people they came from? You couldn't have just appeared with 3 babies. Surrogate. He said it quietly, like the word itself was shameful. We told everyone I'd used a surrogate after our marriage ended, that you and I had parted ways before the babies were born. And everyone believed that? I laughed, bitter and painful. Your friends, your business partners, your family, they all just accepted that story. People believe what they want to believe, especially when the truth is complicated. Complicated. I repeated the word slowly, tasting the inadequacy of it. You stole my children and let me believe they were dead, and you call that complicated? I was trying to protect you. Don't. I held up a hand, rage flooding through me so intensely I shook with it. Don't you dare pretend this was about protecting me. This was about your mother controlling the Morrison heirs, about you being too weak to stand up to her, about you deciding my grief was more convenient than my motherhood. Sterling's face flushed with anger. You have no idea what it was like. You were barely conscious for weeks. Someone had to make decisions. I was their mother. I had the right to make those decisions. You weren't capable. Because you made sure I wasn't. My voice cracked with 9 years of buried anguish. You told me they were dead, Sterling. You held my hand while I sobbed. You comforted me through my grief, all while knowing it was based on a lie. What kind of monster does that to someone they claim to love? I did love you." He stopped himself, the present tense hanging unspoken between us. "Don't." The word was sharp as a blade. "You don't get to claim love. Love doesn't destroy people the way you destroyed me. What are you going to do?" For the first time, I heard fear in his voice. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw not the powerful businessman or the man I'd once adored, but a coward who'd let his mother make his decisions and destroyed lives to avoid difficult conversations. "I'm going to take back what's mine. They're my sons. They're our sons." I stepped closer to him, close enough that he could see the fury in my eyes. "And for 9 years, you've stolen every moment I should have had with them. Every first word, first step, first day of school, every nightmare and triumph and ordinary Tuesday. You stole all of it. Genevieve, please, think about what's best for the boys. They don't know you. I'm the only parent they've ever known. Upending their lives now would be cruel. What's cruel is denying them their mother." My voice was fierce with protective anger. "What's cruel is building their entire existence on a lie. You destroyed me when you left. You called me names that still hurt to think about. I won't let you do that to them. I would never hurt them. You said you'd never hurt me too." Sterling had no answer for that. The young man who had spoken such cruel words to the woman he'd promised to love forever seemed like a stranger now. But the damage he'd caused was still very real, still bleeding. "What can I do to prove I've changed?" "Nothing. There's nothing you can do. Those children have a life, a routine, a sense of security that doesn't include me. I won't disrupt that for your peace of mind. Don't I get a chance to know them? To be their father? You had that chance 9 years ago. You chose your company's legacy over our family's future." Before Sterling could respond, the door to our alcove opened. A woman entered carrying a designer overnight bag, her pregnant belly prominent beneath an elegant maternity dress. "Hello, darling. You're awake." Patricia Melbourne moved to Sterling's side with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting her way. She was beautiful in that cold porcelain doll way that money could buy. Perfect blonde hair, flawless skin, diamonds that probably cost more than my first car. "I've been so worried." She touched Sterling's arm with possessive familiarity before finally acknowledging my presence. "Is everything all right? Dr. Washington was just leaving." Sterling's voice was tight with tension. "We were discussing some, business matters." Patricia. The name clicked into place with sickening recognition. Patricia Melbourne, the woman Sterling had started dating mere months after our divorce. The society princess from the right family with the right pedigree. "Actually, I'm not a doctor." I corrected him with cold precision. "I'm a CEO, and we weren't discussing business. We were discussing his sons." Patricia's eyes narrowed with interest. "His sons? You mean Owen, Felix, and Miles?" "Yes, those 3 boys out there who look exactly like me. Did he tell you where they really came from?" Sterling's hand shot out. "Genevieve, don't what?" "Tell your wife the truth." I turned my attention fully to Patricia. "Did he tell you about his first wife? About the triplets she gave birth to? About how he told her they died?" Patricia's face went pale. "What is she talking about, Sterling?" "This is Genevieve Morrison." Sterling's voice was defeated. "My ex-wife, the boy's biological mother. But you said..." Patricia's voice shook. "You said you used a surrogate. You said she couldn't handle the pregnancy." I lied. The admission seemed to cost him something. "The boys are Genevieve's. She gave birth to them 9 years ago, and I let her believe they didn't survive." Patricia stared at him with dawning horror. "You told her they were dead? The complications were real. She nearly died. My mother thought..." "Your mother..." I interrupted him, my voice cutting. "Your mother decided I wasn't good enough to be mother to Morrison heirs. So she convinced you to steal them from me while I was too drugged to fight back. This is insane." Patricia looked between us, her hand moving protectively to her own pregnant belly. "Sterling, is this true? Every word." The confirmation hung in the air like smoke. "I need to go." Patricia's voice was shaky. I need air." She fled the alcove, leaving Sterling and me alone again. "You just destroyed my marriage." "Good." I felt no sympathy. Now you know how it feels to have everything taken from you. The boys, Genevieve. Please, whatever you think of me, whatever I deserve, don't take them from me. They're the only good thing I've ever done. You didn't do them, Sterling. I did. I carried them for 8 months. I nearly died bringing them into this world. You just stole them after. I know, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. But they need stability. They need their mother. The words came out with absolute certainty. I'd spent 5 years building myself back from. I'd created a company worth millions. I'd learned to be strong, to be ruthless when necessary, to fight for what mattered. And nothing mattered more than this. The Morrison Foundation Gala is in 2 weeks. I pulled out my phone, opening my calendar. I'm on the guest list. I assume you'll be there? Why? I looked at him with a smile that held no warmth. Because that's where I'm going to tell everyone the truth. That's where I'm going to expose exactly what kind of man Sterling Morrison really is. You can't. The scandal. Think about the boys. I've thought about nothing but the boys since the moment I saw them. They deserve the truth. And so does everyone who believed your lies. If you do this, if you expose me publicly, it will hurt them. They'll be caught in the middle of. They're already in the middle of it. You put them there when you built their lives on a lie. I walked toward the alcove entrance, then paused. 2 weeks, Sterling. Get your story straight, because I'm done being silent about what you took from me. I left him standing there and made my way back into the ballroom. My entire body was shaking, adrenaline and rage and grief all mixing together into something volatile. The boys were near the chocolate fountain, laughing at something their nanny was saying. My children, my babies, alive and beautiful and completely unaware that their mother was standing 20 feet away, watching them with a heart that was breaking and mending simultaneously. I needed evidence. I needed documentation. I needed to be strategic about this. Excuse me. I approached the nanny with my most professional smile. I'm so sorry to bother you, but I'm Genevieve Hartley, and I'm doing a feature for my company's newsletter on the next generation of leaders. Would you mind if I took a quick photo with the boys? The nanny looked uncertain. I don't know if Mr. Morrison would. It's for a professional publication. I pulled out my business card, my Forbes feature prominently mentioned. Just a quick photo. They're so well behaved and charming. The boys' faces lit up at the compliment. Children were still young enough to find being photographed exciting. I positioned us carefully, making sure the lighting captured our faces clearly. A passing waiter agreed to snap several photos with my phone. In the images, the resemblance was undeniable. Same eyes, same smile, same unconscious mannerisms. This would be my evidence. This would be the proof I needed. You're really pretty, Owen said as I thanked them. And nice, not like most of Dad's friends. What are Dad's friends like? Boring, Felix declared with confidence. They only talk about money and business and golf. Well, I talk about those things too sometimes, I admitted, kneeling down to their level again. But I also believe the most important thing in life is the people we love and protect. Miles looked at me with those observant eyes. My eyes. Do you have kids? The question hit like a physical blow. My voice caught. I thought I lost mine a long time ago, but I'm starting to think maybe I was wrong. That would be good. He said it with such seriousness, such gravity. Kids need their moms. I had to leave before I broke down completely. The 2 weeks before the Morrison Foundation Gala passed in a blur of activity. I hired Claudia Reeves, the best family law attorney in Boston, a sharp woman in her 50s who'd built her reputation on impossible cases and never losing. This is extraordinary. She sat across from me in her corner office, reviewing the documentation I'd compiled. Medical records showing you gave birth to triplets, death certificates that were clearly falsified, and photos proving those boys are biologically yours. Can we prove Sterling falsified the death certificates? With the right investigation, yes. She tapped her pen against the files. But Genevieve, I need you to consider something. The fastest path forward might be through negotiation rather than litigation. Sterling Morrison has resources. I don't care about his resources. I care about my sons. I understand. Claudia's expression was sympathetic. But dragging this through courts could take years, and during that time the boys would be in limbo. If we approach Sterling privately with the evidence, we might be able to arrange a custody agreement. No. I cut her off. He had 9 years to tell the truth. He chose lies. Now he deals with the consequences publicly. You want justice, not just custody. I want both. Claudia studied me carefully. Exposing him at the gala will certainly make a statement, but it will also traumatize those children. They'll learn their entire life has been a lie in the most public way possible. She was right, and I knew it. But the rage that had been building for 2 weeks wouldn't be satisfied with quiet resolution. What if we give him one chance to make this right? Claudia leaned forward. We present the evidence privately, demand he publicly acknowledge you as the boy's mother at the gala, and begin shared custody immediately. If he refuses, then we go nuclear. I wanted to refuse. The vengeful part of me wanted to watch Sterling's carefully constructed world burn. But Miles' words echoed in my mind. Kids need their moms. This wasn't about punishment. It was about my sons. Fine. I agreed reluctantly. We give him one chance. The meeting took place at Claudia's office 3 days before the gala. Sterling arrived with his own lawyer, Thaddeus Burke, a man who'd defended half of Boston's elite from various scandals. Mr. Morrison, thank you for coming. Claudia's voice was professionally neutral. I believe you know why we're here. I received your email. Sterling's jaw was tight, his posture defensive. Your threats, not threats. Facts. Claudia slid a folder across the table. DNA evidence proving Genevieve is the biological mother of Owen, Felix, and Miles Morrison. Medical records from 9 years ago documenting her pregnancy and delivery. Death certificates filed in the name of 3 infants who are demonstrably alive. Financial records showing payments to hospital staff around the time of the births. Shall I continue? Thaddeus Burke reviewed the documents with increasing concern. This is... Sterling, we need to discuss this privately. No. Sterling's voice was hard. I know what they want. They want to destroy my reputation. Take my sons. They're my sons too. I interrupted quietly. That's the point you keep missing. They're ours. You stole them from me. I gave them a stable life. Everything they could possibly need. Except their mother. Except the truth. I leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen, Sterling. At the Morrison Foundation Gala in 3 days, you're going to publicly introduce me as the mother of your children. You're going to explain that there were complications during the birth. That led to, let's call it a misunderstanding about their survival. You're going to announce that we'll be co-parenting moving forward. And if I refuse? Claudia answered before I could. Then we file criminal charges for fraud, falsifying death certificates, and custodial interference. We take this to every media outlet in Boston. We make sure everyone knows exactly what you did. The boys will be traumatized. They'll be traumatized either way when they learn the truth. I said, this way, they hear it from us in a controlled manner rather than from tabloid headlines. You're asking me to humiliate myself in front of Boston's elite. I'm asking you to tell the truth. For once, we sat in tense silence. Finally, Thaddeus Burke leaned over to whisper something to Sterling. Whatever he said made Sterling's shoulders slump in defeat. Fine. His voice was hoarse. I'll do it. But I want to be the one to tell the boys first. Before the gala. They deserve to hear this from me privately. For the first time since discovering the truth, I saw something human in Sterling's eyes. Fear, not of scandal or consequences, but of losing his son's trust. We tell them together. I said, tomorrow, at your house. Can you imagine discovering your children were alive after 9 years of grief? Drop a comment below telling me what you would do in this situation. Would you forgive? Would you seek revenge? Would you focus only on the children? I want to hear your thoughts. And if you're as angry as Genevieve right now, smash that like button. This story is about to get even more intense. The Morrison estate in Brookline was exactly as I remembered it. A sprawling colonial mansion with manicured gardens and the kind of old money elegance that whispered rather than shouted wealth. I'd lived here once, in another lifetime. When I was Genevieve Morrison instead of Genevieve Hartley. When I was someone's wife instead of someone's victim. Sterling's mother, Barbara Morrison, waited in the foyer like a queen preparing for battle. At 72, she was still formidable. Silver hair perfectly coiffed, designer suit without a single wrinkle. Posture that spoke of generations of breeding and privilege. So you've returned to destroy my grandson's life. She said it without preamble, without greeting, without even the pretense of civility. I've returned to claim my sons. I replied calmly, refusing to let her see how much this house still affected me. This was your idea, wasn't it? telling me they died, keeping them from me. Something flickered in her eyes. Not quite guilt, but close. You were weak. Hysterical. I did what was necessary to protect the Morrison heirs. They're not just heirs, Barbara. They're children. My children. And you stole 9 years from us because you couldn't bear the thought of a middle-class girl being mother to Morrison grandchildren. You would have ruined them. Like I ruined my $42 million company, I stepped closer to her, letting her see the woman I'd become. Like I ruined my reputation as one of Boston's most successful entrepreneurs. I was weak because you and Sterling broke me, but I rebuilt myself into someone stronger than you'll ever be. And now I'm taking back what you stole. Barbara opened her mouth to respond, but Sterling appeared at the top of the staircase with 3 nervous boys trailing behind him. Genevieve. He said my name quietly. They're ready. We gathered in the library, the same room where Sterling had told me 9 years ago that our babies hadn't survived. The symmetry felt intentional, like the universe closing a circle. Owen, Felix, and Miles sat on the leather sofa, watching us with confused anticipation. They were wearing casual clothes today, jeans and t-shirts that made them look even younger than their 9 years. Boys. Sterling's voice was unsteady. You know how I've told you that your mom couldn't be part of your lives? 3 heads nodded in unison. They looked so small on that big sofa, so vulnerable. I wasn't telling you the whole truth. He looked at me, and I saw tears building in his eyes. The truth is that when you were born, there were complications. Your mother was very sick, and I made a terrible mistake. I told her that you didn't survive, and I kept you from her because I thought it was the right thing to do. Felix's face scrunched in confusion. You told her we died, but we're not dead. I know, buddy. Sterling's voice broke. It was wrong. Very, very wrong. Who's our real mom then? Owen asked, though his eyes had already moved to me with dawning understanding. Do you remember the lady from the gala? Sterling managed to say. Miss Hartley. Miles' eyes went wide. The one who looks like us? That's not a coincidence. I spoke directly to them for the first time since this impossible conversation began. I look like you because I'm your mother, because I gave birth to you 9 years ago and loved you even before you were born. But Dad said, Felix trailed off, looking between us with growing confusion. Your dad made a mistake. A big one. But he's trying to fix it now. I knelt in front of them, bringing myself to their eye level. I know this is confusing and scary, and you probably have a million questions. That's okay. We'll answer all of them. Why did you leave us? Miles asked, his voice small and hurt. The question cut through me like glass. I didn't leave you, sweetheart. I thought you were gone. I thought I'd lost you, and it broke my heart so badly I almost didn't survive it. If I'd known you were alive, nothing in the world could have kept me away from you. Owen stared at me with those hazel eyes. My eyes. Do you want to be our mom now? The question shattered something in my chest that had been held together with scar tissue and determination, more than I've ever wanted anything. My voice shook, despite my efforts to control it. But I understand, if you need time. I'm a stranger to you, and that's not your fault. We'll go as slowly as you need. You don't feel like a stranger. Felix said it thoughtfully, like he was working through a puzzle. You feel like someone we were supposed to know. I couldn't stop the tears anymore. They fell freely, years of grief and loss and impossible hope all mixing together. Sterling cleared his throat. In a few days, we're going to tell some other people about this, at a big party. It might be uncomfortable, but we'll all be together, okay? And after that, you'll get to spend time with both of us, your mom and me. Do we have to call you Mom? Owen's question was practical, cautious. Or can we call you Genevieve until it feels right? You can call me whatever feels comfortable, I assured him, grateful for his honesty. There's no rush, no pressure. Miles slid off the couch and approached me cautiously, studying my face with that intense observation I was coming to recognize as his defining trait. Then, without warning, he wrapped his small arms around my neck. I'm glad you're not dead. He whispered it against my shoulder, and I felt my entire world shift on its axis. I held my son, my baby, my miracle. I breathed in the scent of his shampoo and felt 9 years of grief begin to transform into something else. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the possibility of healing. Felix and Owen watched this exchange with careful attention. Then, as if reaching a silent agreement, they joined the embrace. 3 boys who'd grown up without me, choosing to trust me despite having every reason not to. Over their heads, I met Sterling's eyes. He was crying openly now, watching the family he'd destroyed trying to rebuild itself. "Thank you," he mouthed the words silently. I didn't respond. This wasn't about him. This wasn't about forgiveness or reconciliation or anything except these 3 children who deserved better than the lies they'd been fed. When we finally pulled apart, Felix had questions. Lots of questions. That was clearly his personality. The logical one, the one who needed to understand how things worked. "So, you're really our mom? Like, biological mom?" "Yes. I carried all 3 of you at the same time. That's called triplets. Did it hurt?" "Sometimes. But you were worth it. Why didn't you fight to keep us?" The question was sharper than he probably intended, but children had a way of cutting straight to the truth. "I didn't know I needed to fight. I thought you were gone." I glanced at Sterling, then back to Felix. "The doctors and your dad told me you hadn't survived the birth. I was very sick myself, and when I woke up, they said you were gone. But we weren't gone. No, you weren't. And if I'd known that, I would have fought. I would have done anything to be with you." Owen had a different concern. "Do we have to choose? Between you and Dad?" "Never." The word came out fierce and certain. "You never have to choose. You get to love both of us. That's what CO parenting means." "What about Grandma Barbara?" Miles asked quietly. "She doesn't like you." "No, she doesn't. I tried to be honest without poisoning them against their grandmother. But that's between her and me. It doesn't change how she feels about you. She says you're not good enough for our family." Felix reported with the brutal honesty of children repeating what they'd overheard. Sterling's face went red. "Felix, that's not. It's okay." I interrupted him. "She's entitled to her opinion, but I know my worth now, and it has nothing to do with her approval." The boys seemed to accept this. Children were remarkably resilient when given truth and stability. We talked for another hour. I answered their questions. I learned their favorite colors, their favorite foods, their favorite subjects in school. Owen loved art. Felix loved science. Miles loved reading and writing stories. They were perfect, brilliant and funny and kind, everything I'd hoped they'd be, and more. When it was time to leave, I knelt down one more time. "I know this is a lot to process. Take your time. Think about it. And, if you have more questions, you can ask me anytime. Can we see you before the big party?" Owen asked hopefully. "Absolutely. Maybe we could get ice cream this week." 3 faces lit up with a kind of pure joy that only children could express. As I drove away from the Morrison estate, I caught sight of Barbara watching from an upper window. Her expression was unreadable, but I didn't care anymore. She'd had her power over me once. Never again. My phone rang as I pulled onto the highway. Claudia's name appeared on the screen. How did it go? Better than expected. The boys know now. They took it remarkably well. And Sterling? He's genuinely trying. I admitted it reluctantly, which almost makes it harder. Why? Because it would be easier if he was still the villain, if he hadn't changed at all. But he seems to actually regret what he did. Regret doesn't undo harm. Claudia's voice was firm. Don't let his remorse manipulate you into forgetting what he stole. I won't. But for the boy's sake, I need to find a way to work with him. The gala is in 3 days. Are you still comfortable with the plan? I thought about it. About standing in front of Boston's elite and exposing Sterling's betrayal. About the scandal it would cause, the gossip, the judgment. About how it would affect Owen, Felix, and Miles. Yes, they deserve to know their mother isn't someone to be ashamed of. That their existence isn't a secret to be hidden. Claudia was quiet for a moment. You're a remarkable woman, Genevieve Hartley. I'm a mother who's been kept from her children for 9 years. That makes me dangerous. I spent the next 3 days in a strange limbo between my old life and my new reality. I still had a company to run, meetings to attend, decisions to make. But everything felt different now. Everything was colored by the knowledge that my children were alive. Sterling sent me photos. The boys at breakfast, doing homework, playing in the backyard. Small glimpses into the life I'd missed. Each photo was a gift and a wound simultaneously. On the second day, we met for ice cream at a small shop in Cambridge, far enough from the Morrisons' usual haunts that we wouldn't be recognized. The boys were more relaxed this time, asking questions about my company, my house, my life. Do you have pets? Felix wanted to know. Not yet, but I've been thinking about getting a dog. Can we help pick it out? Owen's eyes went wide with hope. Absolutely. It was such a normal conversation, such an ordinary moment, and it meant everything. Miles was quieter, observing our interactions with thoughtful attention. Finally, he asked the question I'd been dreading. Do you hate Dad? I chose my words carefully. I'm very angry at him for the choices he made, but hate is exhausting, and I don't have energy for it. What I care about is building a relationship with you three. Even if we love him, especially because you love him, he's your father. He's been there for you your whole lives. Nothing I say or do will change that. But you're our mom. Yes, and I'll be here now too. You get both of us. Felix had a more practical concern. Where will we live? That's something your dad and I need to figure out. Probably you'll spend some time at his house and some time at mine. Do you have a big house? Big enough for 3 boys to visit comfortably. Can we have bunk beds at your house? Owen asked hopefully. Grandma Barbara says they're not appropriate for Morrison heirs. I laughed, the sound surprising me with its genuineness. We can have whatever you want. Bunk beds, regular beds, hammocks. Hammocks, all 3 chorused. When I dropped them back at the Morrison estate, Sterling was waiting on the front steps. Thank you for this. He gestured to the boys, who were chattering excitedly about hammock beds. They haven't been this animated in months. They're incredible children. Despite everything, you've done a good job raising them. The compliment seemed to surprise him. You don't have to say that. I'm not saying it for you. I'm saying it because it's true. They're kind, intelligent, curious. That doesn't happen by accident. Their mother is brilliant. He said it quietly. They get it from her. Don't. I warned him. Don't do that. Do what? Try to build bridges with compliments. We're not friends, Sterling. We're not anything except 2 people who have to co-parent 3 children. Keep it professional. I understand, but as I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. Not forgiveness, but maybe the beginning of something less actively hostile. The night before the gala, I stood in my penthouse apartment overlooking Boston Harbor. The city lights reflected off the water like scattered diamonds. 9 years ago, I'd left this city broken and grieving. I'd been Genevieve Morrison, a woman defined by her relationship to a man and her failure to provide him with heirs. Now, I was Genevieve Hartley, CEO, self-made millionaire, and mother to 3 sons who didn't even know I existed until 2 weeks ago. Tomorrow, I would stand in front of Boston's elite and reclaim my identity, not as Sterling Morrison's victim, but as Owen, Felix, and Miles's mother. My phone buzzed with a text from Sterling. The boys want to be at the gala. They want to see us tell the truth together. I think they should be there. What do you think? I stared at the message for a long moment. It would be easier without them there, easier to be harsh, to let my anger show, to expose Sterling without worrying about small faces watching. But this wasn't about what was easier. It was about what was right. I agree. They should be there. They deserve to witness us finally doing the right thing. His response came quickly. Thank you for giving me a chance to make this right. You're not making it right, Sterling. You're just making it less wrong. There's a difference. I know. I set my phone down and returned to watching the city. Somewhere out there, 3 boys were probably getting ready for bed, brushing teeth, putting on pajamas, maybe asking their father nervous questions about tomorrow. My sons, my babies who'd grown into people without me. Tomorrow, the world would know the truth. Tomorrow, I would stop being the grieving woman who'd lost her children and become the warrior who got them back. I was ready. The morning of the Morrison Foundation Gala arrived with the kind of perfect autumn weather that felt like a sign. Clear skies, golden light, the air crisp enough to feel invigorating rather than cold. I woke up at 5 in the morning, my body buzzing with anticipation and nerves. Sleep had been elusive, my mind running through every possible scenario, every potential outcome of what I was about to do. Today, I would stand in front of Boston's elite and tell the truth. Today, I would reclaim my identity as a mother. Today, everything would change. I went through my morning routine with mechanical precision. Coffee, shower, skincare, hair appointment at 8, makeup appointment at 10. The silver gown was already hanging in my closet, waiting like armor. My phone rang as I was finishing my coffee. Sterling's name appeared on the screen. I answered without greeting. "What is it?" "I just wanted to check in." His voice sounded as tired as I felt. "Make sure you're still okay with this, with exposing you in front of everyone you know." I kept my tone neutral. "Yes, I'm still okay with it. I deserve that." He was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about what I'm going to say. I want to get it right. For the boys, just tell the truth, Sterling. That's all that matters. The truth is that I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me because I was a coward." "Is that what you want me to say?" "I want you to say whatever you need to say to sleep at night, but make sure it includes acknowledging me as their mother. Make sure it includes admitting what you did. Make sure those boys hear that none of this was their fault." "I will. I promise." "How are they?" I needed to know. "Are they nervous?" "Excited, actually. Owen wants to wear a blue tie because he says it brings out his eyes. Felix has been researching the science of public speaking. Miles wrote a speech just in case someone asks him to talk." I smiled despite myself. They sound like they're handling this better than we are. They're remarkable kids. Sterling's voice carried genuine pride. "You would have raised them so well, Genevieve. I robbed you of that, and I robbed them of you. I'm sorrier than I know how to say. Sorry doesn't give me back 9 years. I know. We hung up without saying goodbye. There was nothing left to say. Tonight would do all the talking necessary. At the salon, my stylist worked magic with my hair. Soft waves that caught light, elegant without being overdone. She kept trying to make conversation, asking about the gala, about my date, about what I'd be wearing. "I'm going alone," I told her, "and I'm making an announcement that's going to shock a lot of people." Her eyes lit up with curiosity, but I didn't elaborate. Let her find out with everyone else. The makeup artist was equally skilled, giving me a look that was powerful without being harsh. Smoky eyes that made my hazel irises look almost golden. A nude lip that wouldn't distract from what I had to say. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. This woman looked strong, confident, ready for battle. Nothing like the broken girl who'd left Boston 9 years ago. Back at my penthouse, I slipped into the silver gown. It fit perfectly, hugging my curves before flowing like liquid mercury to the floor. The neckline was modest, but striking, the back daringly low. I looked successful, powerful, and completely in control. All things I'd had to become in order to survive what Sterling had done to me. My phone buzzed with a text from Claudia. "Break a leg tonight. You're going to be amazing. Call me after, no matter how late." Another text, this one from my assistant at the company. "Saw the photos from your salon appointment on Instagram. You look incredible, boss. Whatever you're planning, you've got this." And then, unexpectedly, a text from Miles. "We're getting ready. Owen says you're going to look like a princess. I think you're going to look like a queen. See you soon." I sat down on my bed, suddenly overwhelmed. This child, this boy I'd only known for 2 weeks, was already defending me, already choosing me. All 3 of them were. They deserved so much better than the war their parents were about to wage. But they also deserved the truth. I arrived at the Fairmont Copley Plaza at exactly 6:30, early enough to avoid the main crowd, late enough that the venue was already glittering with preparation. Crystal chandeliers, white orchids in massive arrangements, tables set with china that probably cost more than my first car. The Morrison Foundation Gala was always the event of the Boston social season. 500 guests, donations totaling millions. The city's most powerful people all gathered in one room to congratulate themselves on their charitable giving. Tonight, they'd get more than they bargained for. Miss Hartley, a young woman with a clipboard, approached me with a professional smile. "We have you seated at table 12, near the stage. Mr. Morrison requested you be placed there." "Of course he did." "Thank you." I made my way through the ballroom, nodding at acquaintances, deflecting. Questions about my company, my success, my reason for attending. Around me, Boston's elite gathered in their designer. Gowns and tailored tuxedos, all of them completely unaware that their evening was about to be upended. I spotted Barbara Morrison holding court near the silent auction tables. She was surrounded by her usual circle, society matrons who'd known each other for decades and wielded their old money like weapons. When she saw me, her expression hardened into something that could have cut glass. I smiled at her, not warmly, but with the confidence of someone who knew she'd already lost. "Genevieve, I turned to find Richard Pemberton and his wife approaching. They looked genuinely pleased to see me. "Richard, Mrs. Pemberton, lovely to see you both. We were just telling the Ashfords about your company's latest acquisition." Richard gestured to an older couple I vaguely recognized. $42 million valuation is extraordinary for a 5-year-old startup. We've been very fortunate. Skill, not fortune. Mrs. Pemberton touched my arm. "You've built something remarkable, my dear. You should be very proud." The conversation continued, light and meaningless, but I could feel the tension building in my chest. The clock was ticking toward the moment when everything would change. At 7:15, Sterling arrived with the boys. My breath caught when I saw them, all three dressed in miniature tuxedos, looking so grown up and so young simultaneously. Owen wore a blue tie, just as Sterling had said. Felix looked serious and focused. Miles searched the crowd until he found me, then waved with barely contained excitement. I made my way over to them, aware of eyes following my movement. People were already starting to whisper. Why was Genevieve Hartley approaching Sterling Morrison? What was their connection? They were about to find out. "You look beautiful." Owen said it with such sincerity that my heart melted. "Thank you, sweetheart." "So do you, all three of you." "I feel like I'm going to throw up," Felix admitted with his usual honesty. "I don't like everyone looking at us." "I know, but we'll get through this together, okay? All 5 of us." Sterling looked at me over the boys' heads. "You look stunning." "Save it." I kept my voice low. "This isn't about us. It's about them." "I know." The boys wanted to explore the dessert table, so Sterling's nanny took them across the ballroom. That left Sterling and me standing together for the first time in public since our divorce 9 years ago. "People are staring," he observed quietly. "Let them stare. In about an hour, they'll have a lot more to stare at." "Are you sure about this? There's still time to do this differently. We could make a private announcement, control the narrative." "No." I met his eyes directly. "You controlled the narrative for 9 years. Now the truth gets told, publicly, with witnesses. You've become so hard. I've become what I needed to be to survive what you did to me." Before Sterling could respond, Barbara Morrison appeared like a storm cloud. "What is she doing here?" She addressed Sterling while looking at me with undisguised contempt. "Mother, please, not now. Not now. Not now. You're standing here with a woman who's about to destroy our family's reputation, and you say not now? I'm not destroying anything." I finally spoke directly to her. "I'm telling the truth. There's a difference." "The truth?" Barbara's laugh was bitter. "The truth is that you were never strong enough for this family. You proved that by falling apart after the birth. I fell apart because your son told me my children were dead. I kept my voice conversational despite the rage burning in my chest. I fell apart because you convinced him to steal my babies and let me grieve them for 9 years. That's not weakness, Barbara. That's a rational response to psychological torture." "How dare you? How dare I?" I stepped closer to her, letting her see exactly how much I'd changed. "How dare you? You played God with my life, with my children's lives, because you thought I wasn't good enough for the Morrison name. Well, guess what? I built myself into something far more impressive than this family ever was. And tonight, everyone's going to know exactly what kind of people you really are. Sterling, control your ex-wife. She's not mine to control." Sterling's voice was quiet but firm. "She never was. That was always my mistake." Barbara looked between us with something like horror. "You're really going to let her do this? You're going to let her humiliate us?" "I'm going to tell the truth. And if that humiliates us, then we deserve it." Barbara opened her mouth to respond, but Owen, Felix, and Miles came running. Back, their faces lit up with excitement about the chocolate fountain. "Grandma." Owen hugged Barbara's waist, completely unaware of the tension. "Did you see how big the fountain is?" Barbara's expression softened when she looked at the boys. She loved them, I could see that. She just loved them more than she'd valued my right to be their mother. "Yes, darling. It's very impressive." Miles tugged on my hand. "Can we sit with you during dinner?" The question clearly surprised Barbara and Sterling both. "If your dad says it's okay." I looked at Sterling, challenging him to object. "Of course, we'll all sit together. As a family." The words "as a family" hung in the air like a declaration of war. Dinner was served at 7:45. I sat at table 12 with Sterling, the boys, and several of Sterling's. business associates who looked deeply confused by the seating arrangement. The conversations around us were careful, polite, dancing around the obvious question of what my relationship to Sterling Morrison was. The boys were surprisingly well behaved, using proper silverware and making appropriate small talk. They'd been raised in this world, taught from birth how to navigate high society events. But every so often, one of them would look at me with such open affection that my heart would break and heal simultaneously. "Mom," Miles whispered it so quietly I almost didn't hear. "When are you and Dad going to talk to everyone?" The word Mom hit me like lightning. He'd never called me that before. After dinner, during the program. "Are you nervous?" "A little. But Felix says public speaking is just about confidence and preparation. And Owen says we should just be honest and people will understand." "They're both right. What do you think?" "I think you're the wisest of the three, and that's saying something." He smiled, ducking his head with shy pride. Dinner ended at 8:30. The foundation's president took the stage to begin the program, thanking donors, highlighting achievements, celebrating the millions raised for various causes. Sterling and I sat side by side, not touching, barely breathing. The boys sat between us, a living bridge between our separate lives. And now, the president smiled broadly. "I'd like to invite Sterling Morrison to the stage. As you all know, the Morrison family has been instrumental in this foundation's success, and Sterling has a special announcement to make this evening." This was it. Sterling stood up, buttoning his tuxedo jacket with hands that trembled slightly. He looked at me, and I saw genuine fear in his eyes. I nodded once. Permission, acknowledgement, a recognition that we were about to cross a line we could never uncross. He walked to the stage while 500 people watched. The room quieted, everyone's attention focused on the handsome billionaire, who'd always been so polished, so perfect, so in control. Tonight, that perfection was about to shatter. "Good evening." Sterling's voice was steady despite the tension I could see in his shoulders. "Thank you all for being here tonight, for your continued support of the foundation, and for your friendship over the years." He paused, gripping the podium. "Before we continue with our normal program, I have an important announcement to make, one that's long overdue." The whispers started immediately. People leaning toward each other, speculation beginning. 9 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life. The room went silent. I let fear and bad advice convince me to do something unforgivable. I betrayed someone I loved. I robbed my children of their mother, and I built my life on a lie that hurt everyone involved. Now people were shifting in their seats, confused, concerned. Many of you know my sons, Owen, Felix, and Miles. He gestured to our table, and I felt the weight of 500 gazes turning toward the boys. What you don't know is that their mother has been absent from their lives not by choice, but because of my actions. The murmuring grew louder. When my ex-wife Genevieve was pregnant with our triplets, there were severe complications during delivery. She nearly died. And in the chaos that followed, in the fear and confusion, I made the decision to tell her that our sons hadn't survived. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. Someone dropped a glass. The sound of shattering crystal punctuated Sterling's confession. I allowed her to grieve children who were alive. I kept her from them for 9 years because I was a coward who listened to people who valued reputation over truth, who valued legacy over love. He was crying now, tears streaming down his face in front of Boston's entire elite. Genevieve Morrison, now Genevieve Hartley, is here tonight. Every eye in the room turned to me, and I'd like to ask her to join me on stage. I stood slowly, aware of the perfect picture I made in my silver gown. I could hear the whispers intensifying. Shock, confusion, recognition. That's Genevieve Hartley, the tech CEO. She was married to Sterling. He told her the babies were dead? How could anyone do that? I climbed the stairs to the stage with my head held high. Sterling handed me the microphone, and for a moment we stood side by side. Two people who'd once promised to love each other forever, now united, only by the children we'd created and the betrayal that had defined us. I turned to face the crowd and saw my sons watching me with wide eyes. This was for them. "Good evening." My voice was calm, controlled, carrying across the silent ballroom. For those who don't know me, I'm Genevieve Hartley, founder and CEO of Hartley Digital Solutions, featured in Forbes, TechCrunch, and several other publications celebrating entrepreneurship and innovation. I paused, letting them absorb this information. But tonight, those achievements don't matter. Tonight, I'm here as a mother. I found Owen, Felix, and Miles in the crowd, their faces my anchor. 2 weeks ago, I attended a gala at the Metropolitan Arts Center. I saw 3 boys standing near a dessert table. They were fidgeting with their bow ties, clearly uncomfortable in their fancy clothes. A few people smiled at this, recognizing the universal truth of children in formal wear. But what caught my attention wasn't their discomfort. It was their faces, their eyes, their smiles, their mannerisms. They looked exactly like me. I let that sink in. Same auburn hair with copper undertones. Same hazel eyes that shift between green and gold. Same cleft in the chin. Same constellation of freckles. Same gestures, same habits, same unconscious movements. Now people were starting to understand. I approached these boys, and I learned their names. Owen, Felix, Miles. My voice broke slightly on their names. Those were the names my husband and I had chosen 9 years ago for the triplets I was carrying. The triplets I went into premature labor with at 32 weeks. The triplets I underwent emergency surgery to deliver while hemorrhaging and fighting for my life. The ballroom was so quiet, I could hear my own heartbeat. When I woke up from that surgery, my husband told me our babies hadn't survived. All 3 of them, gone, and I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, the man I loved, the father of my children. I looked directly at Barbara Morrison, whose face had gone pale. I spent 6 months in a psychiatric facility after that. 6 months drowning in grief so profound I wanted to die. I lost my marriage, my home, my entire life in Boston. I left this city broken and hollow, believing I'd failed at the most important thing I'd ever tried to do. Be a mother. Some people in the audience were crying now, but my babies weren't dead. They were alive, breathing, growing, learning, becoming the remarkable young men I met 2 weeks ago. They'd been raised by their father and grandmother, told that their mother couldn't. It'd be part of their lives, while I grieved children who were very much alive. The anger in my voice was impossible to hide now. Sterling Morrison is right. He made a terrible mistake. But I'm not here tonight for revenge or to humiliate him. I looked at my sons again. I'm here because those 3 boys deserve the truth. They deserve to know that their mother loved them from the moment she knew they existed, that she carried them despite complications that could have killed her, that she grieved them when she thought they were gone, that she would have fought heaven and earth for them if she'd known they were alive. My voice grew stronger. They deserve to know that their mother didn't abandon them, that she wasn't too weak or too broken or too anything, that she was lied to by people who thought they knew better, who thought legacy and reputation mattered more than truth and love. I turned to Barbara Morrison. Some people value appearances over humanity. They value family name over family bonds. They make decisions about other people's lives because they think their money and status give them that right. Barbara's friends were staring at her with dawning horror. But I'm here to tell you that nothing, not money, not reputation, not family legacy, is worth more than the truth. Nothing is worth stealing a mother from her children and children from their mother. The applause started slowly. One person, then another, then a wave of genuine support that built until most of the room was clapping. Not everyone. Barbara's circle sat with pursed lips and crossed arms. A few of Sterling's business associates looked uncomfortable, caught between social loyalty and moral disgust. But enough people understood. Enough people recognized the magnitude of what had been done to me. I handed the microphone back to Sterling. Moving forward, his voice was hoarse with emotion. Genevieve and I will be co-parenting our sons. We'll be working together to help them understand their story and build relationships with both of their parents. He looked out at the crowd. I know many of you will have questions and opinions about this situation, but I'm asking you to remember that at the center of this are 3 children who deserve privacy, understanding, and support as they navigate this transition. The applause came again, though more subdued this time. As Sterling continued speaking about the foundation and the evening's program, I made my way off the stage. My legs were shaking, adrenaline flooding my system now that the moment had passed. I'd done it. I'd told the truth in front of everyone who mattered in this city. The boys met me at the bottom of the stage stairs. That was really brave. Owen said seriously, his young face showing wisdom beyond his years. Your dad was the brave one. I knelt down to their level, not caring that my gown was pooling on the floor. It's harder to admit you were wrong than to point out someone else's mistakes. Grandma Barbara left. Felix reported with something like satisfaction. Her face got really red, and she walked out with Mrs. Ashworth and Mrs. Pemberton. She'll come around eventually, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. Miles tucked his hand into mine, the gesture so natural and trusting it made my heart skip. Can we come to your house sometime? I want to see where you live. Anytime you want. I have a guest room that could become 3 bedrooms if you wanted to stay overnight sometimes. Could we get bunk beds? Owen's eyes lit up with childhood excitement that was so pure and genuine. We've always wanted bunk beds, but Grandma Barbara says they're not appropriate for Morrison heirs. I laughed, the sound bubbling up from somewhere genuine and healing. We can get whatever you want. Bunk beds, regular beds, hammocks. Your choice. Hammocks. All 3 chorused together. The rest of the gala passed in a blur. People approached me with congratulations, support, questions. Some were genuinely moved by what they'd heard. Others were clearly there for the gossip value. Richard Pemberton found me near the bar. That was extraordinary. He shook his head with something like awe. I've attended this gala for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like that. It needed to be said. Barbara Morrison has run this city's social circles for decades. You just publicly challenged her in a way no one else ever has. She deserved it. More than deserved it. His expression was serious. What she did to you was monstrous. And I suspect a lot of people are going to be reevaluating their relationships with the Morrison family after tonight. That's not my concern. I just want my sons. And now you have them. He smiled. Well done, Miss Hartley. Sterling found me as the evening was winding down. The boys were with their nanny, getting ready to leave. Thank you. He said it quietly. For not destroying me up there. You could have. I told the truth. That's all. It was more gracious than I deserved. I looked at him, this man who'd been my husband, my betrayer, and now my CO parent. This was never about destroying you, Sterling. It was about finding my sons. I know. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry for what I took from you. From all of us. Sorry doesn't give me back 9 years. But it's a start. We'll figure this out. For them. For them. I agreed. If you've been following this story, if you felt every betrayal and every triumph, I need you to hit that like button right now. Share this with someone who needs to hear that survival is possible, that truth always wins, that mothers will fight through hell for their children. Drop a comment telling me what you would do in this situation. Would you forgive Sterling? Would you work with Barbara Morrison? How would you rebuild after something like this? And make sure you're subscribed to Love and Twilights with Dr. Phillips, because stories like this, stories about real courage and real love, are what we're all about. 6 months later, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. The custody arrangement had settled into a comfortable rhythm. The boys spent weekdays with Sterling in Brookline, weekends with me in my newly purchased home in Cambridge. We alternated holidays and special occasions, coordinating through a shared calendar that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. My house had been transformed. The minimalist decor I'd cultivated as a defense against feeling too much had given way to color and chaos and life. Owen's artwork covered the walls. Abstract paintings that showed real talent, explosions of color that somehow captured emotion in ways that took my breath away. Felix's science experiments were in various stages of completion throughout the house. A model of the solar system hanging in the living room. A rock collection that took up half the dining room table. Chemistry sets that I'd made him promise to only use under supervision. Miles' books were everywhere, stacked on shelves, piled on tables, scattered across the reading loft we'd built specifically for him. He wrote stories constantly, creating worlds and characters and adventures that showed imagination far beyond his 9 years. The hammock idea had been vetoed by the contractor for safety reasons, but we had compromised with custom bunk beds that the boys had designed themselves. Felix had drawn up blueprints. Owen had chosen colors. Miles had written a story about 3 brothers who lived in a magical treehouse, and we'd incorporated elements from his descriptions. It was chaotic and loud and messy and perfect. This particular Saturday morning, I woke to the sound of arguing coming from the kitchen. Owen, you can't put chocolate chips in scrambled eggs. Why not? They're both breakfast foods. That's not how it works. Boys. I appeared in the doorway, still in my pajamas. What's going on? Felix won't let me experiment with breakfast. Owen complained with his typical dramatic flair. Because chocolate doesn't go in eggs. Felix insisted with his scientist's logic. Actually, Miles looked up from his book at the kitchen table. In some cultures they do mix sweet and savory breakfast foods. I read about it. See? Owen gestured triumphantly. That doesn't mean chocolate chips and scrambled eggs is a good idea. I tried to mediate. How about chocolate chip pancakes instead? Fine. Owen agreed with only minor reluctance. This was my life now. Negotiating breakfast disputes, mediating sibling arguments, being called Mom 100 times a day in ways that ranged from whining to affectionate to urgent. I loved every chaotic second of it. Later that morning, Sterling arrived to pick up the boys for Owen's art class. He'd been consistent about Kyo parenting, showing up when he said he would, communicating clearly, respecting boundaries. We still weren't friends, but we'd achieved something like functional partnership. How was the week? He asked while the boys gathered their things. Good. Felix won first place at the science fair. Owen finished a painting he's really proud of. Miles wrote a short story that his teacher wants to submit to a contest. That's incredible. Sterling's pride was genuine. They're thriving. They are. Because of you. You've given them something I never could. Freedom to be themselves. You've given them structure and stability. I acknowledged. They need both. It was the closest we'd come to actual compliments since the gala. How's Patricia? I asked, because I was trying to be civil. We're divorced. He said it matter-of-factly. Finalized last month. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was the right thing. We were never really in love, and after the truth came out, she couldn't forgive the lies. That's fair. The boys came thundering down the stairs, backpacks and art supplies in hand. Ready, Dad, Owen announced. Thanks for breakfast, Mom. Felix gave me a quick hug. See you tomorrow. Miles squeezed my hand. I watched them pile into Sterling's car, chattering about their plans for the day. 6 months ago, watching them leave would have terrified me. The fear that they wouldn't come back, that Sterling would disappear with them, that I'd lose them again. But I'd learned to trust the routine. They always came back. That afternoon, I met Claudia for coffee in Harvard Square. You look happy, she observed with a smile. Really, genuinely happy. I am. It's strange. I spent 9 years building a life around the hole they left, and now, that hole is filled, and I have to figure out who I am with them. You're a mother who runs a multi-million-dollar company. That's who you are. It's more than that. I stirred my coffee thoughtfully. I'm rebuilding myself again, but this time not from trauma, from joy. That's beautiful. How's the civil suit against Barbara Morrison going? We'd filed a civil lawsuit against Barbara for her role in the conspiracy. Not for money, but for accountability. Her lawyers are trying to settle, Claudia reported. They're offering a formal apology and a sizable donation to maternal mental health charities. What do you think? I think it's performative, but I also think it's the best we're going to get. Barbara Morrison will never actually take responsibility, but at least this puts it on the record. I'll think about it. That evening, the boys came back from their day with Sterling full of stories about the art class and the new exhibit at the Science Museum. We had dinner together, spaghetti and meatballs that we made from scratch, flour covering the kitchen and laughter filling the house. After dinner, we went out to the back porch. I had had it screened in and furnished with comfortable chairs. It had become our favorite place to wind down before bed. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. The boys were sprawled across various chairs, that particular kind of relax that came from a full day and full stomachs. Mom? Miles asked thoughtfully, do you think Dad knew what he was doing was wrong? Like, at the time? I chose my words carefully, aware that how I answered would shape how they understood their father. I think he knew it was wrong, but he convinced himself it was necessary. People do that sometimes when they're afraid. They make bad choices and then justify them. Grandma Barbara still doesn't like you, Felix observed with his usual bluntness. She'd never apologized, never reached out, never acknowledged what she'd done. The civil suit was the closest thing to accountability she'd offered. No, she doesn't. But that's okay. Not everyone has to like us. We like you, Owen said loyally, sitting up straighter. Actually, we love you. Is it okay to say that? My eyes burned with tears that I'd learned were okay to let fall. It's more than okay. It's everything. We love Dad too, Miles added carefully, watching my reaction. Is that okay? Of course it is. He's your father, and despite his mistakes, he loves you very much. You're allowed to love both of us. Good, Felix said with satisfaction, because it would be really annoying to have to choose. I pulled all three of them close, breathing in their shampoo and grass-stained chaos, feeling gratitude so profound it almost hurt. I'd lost 9 years with them. 9 years I could never get back. But I had the rest of their childhood ahead. Their teenage years, graduations, first heartbreaks, first triumphs, college applications and career choices, and eventually, maybe, grandchildren. I had thousands of moments waiting, and this time, nothing and no one would take them from me. "Hey, Mom?" Owen asked. "Can we get a dog?" "Absolutely not," I said, already knowing I'd cave within the week. "She's going to say yes," Felix whispered to his brothers. "Definitely saying yes," Miles agreed. I tried to look stern and failed completely. "We'll discuss it. That's parent code for yes." All three chorused, dissolving into giggles. 1 week later, we adopted a rescue mutt from the local shelter. The boys named him Phoenix, and despite the on-the-nose symbolism, it felt right. A family rising from ashes. A mother reclaiming what was stolen. Children learning that truth, however painful, was always better than lies. 3 months after that, Owen's art teacher called to tell me that one of his paintings had been selected for a citywide youth exhibition. The painting was titled Family Tree. It showed a tree with strong roots and spreading branches, with faces emerging from the bark. My face. Sterling's face. The boys' faces. Even Barbara's, though she was on a smaller branch. We all attended the exhibition opening. Me, Sterling, the boys. Even Barbara showed up, though she stood at a distance, watching with an expression I couldn't quite read. When Owen gave his artist talk about the piece, he spoke with clarity and confidence. "This painting is about families that break apart and come back together differently. The roots are still strong, but the branches grow in new directions. And that's okay. Sometimes the best families are the ones that survive being broken." The audience applauded. I cried. Sterling cried. Even Barbara had to wipe her eyes. After the event, she approached me for the first time since the gala. "He has talent," she said stiffly, gesturing to Owen's painting. "He does. They all do. It's remarkable." We stood in awkward silence. "I was wrong," Barbara finally said, the words clearly costing her everything. "About you, about what I did. I thought I was protecting them, but I was really just protecting my idea of what the family should be." It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever get from her. "I appreciate you saying that. Can I?" She hesitated. "Can I try to know them better? Without the lies? Without trying to control everything?" I looked at this woman who'd caused me so much pain, and I thought about Owen's painting, families that survive being broken. "Yes, but on our terms, with honesty. And if you hurt them, Barbara, if you poison them against me or Sterling or anyone, that chance ends. Understood? Understood." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was the beginning of something that might eventually lead there. 1 year after the gala, the Morrison Foundation held its annual event again. This time I arrived with 3 boys in tuxedos and a rescue dog who had to stay home. Sterling met us at the entrance, and for the first time in a year, we walked in together as a family. Unconventional, broken in places, rebuilt in others, but a family nonetheless. The whispers followed us, of course, but they were different now. Respectful rather than scandalized. Curious rather than judgmental. During dinner, Owen raised his glass of sparkling cider. "I want to make a toast." All conversations at our table stopped. "I want to thank my mom and dad for being brave enough to tell the truth, even when it was hard. And I want to thank my brothers for being the best brothers in the world. And I want to thank everyone here for supporting our family, even when it's complicated." The entire table applauded. Then the tables around us. Then, somehow, the entire ballroom was clapping for this 9-year-old boy who'd just summed up everything that mattered. Sterling's hand found mine under the table. Not romantic, not even affectionate, just acknowledgement, partnership, shared parenthood. I squeezed back once, then let go. After dinner, they asked me to say a few words. I hadn't prepared anything, but I found myself walking to the stage anyway. A year ago, I stood on this stage and told you the hardest truth of my life, that my children, who I'd been told were dead, were actually alive, that I'd been stolen from them, and they from me. The room was silent, remembering. Tonight, I stand here as a mother, not a victim, not a survivor, though I am that too, but primarily, fundamentally, a mother. I found my sons in the audience. Being their mom is the greatest privilege of my life. Watching them grow, supporting their dreams, navigating their challenges, making breakfast and helping with homework, and listening to the same story about school for the 5th time because they're excited and want to share. People smiled, recognizing the universal truths of parenthood. I built a company worth $42 million. I've been featured in national publications. I've given keynotes and won awards and achieved things I'm proud of. But none of that matters as much as being called mom. None of that compares to 3 boys arguing about whether chocolate chips belong in scrambled eggs. None of that is as important as showing up day after day and choosing love over bitterness. I looked at Sterling, then at Barbara, who'd come this year despite everything. This past year has taught me that forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about deciding that love for your children matters more than anger at the people who hurt you. It's about choosing to build something new instead of staying stuck in what was destroyed. My voice grew stronger. So to anyone out there who's been betrayed, who's lost something precious, who's had to rebuild themselves from nothing, I want you to know that survival is possible. That joy can exist alongside pain. That families can be broken and mended and broken and mended again, and still be worth fighting for. The applause was thunderous. As I left the stage, the boys rushed to meet me. 3 sets of arms wrapping around me, 3 voices saying mom simultaneously, creating a moment I wanted to freeze forever. That night, after the gala ended and the boys were asleep in Sterling's guest room, I stood on his back patio looking at the stars. He joined me, 2 glasses of wine in hand. You didn't have to do that. Speak so kindly about forgiveness and second chances. I did it for them. I accepted the wine glass. They need to see that people can change, that mistakes don't define you forever. Do you really believe that? I'm trying to. We stood in comfortable silence for a while. I don't think I've ever told you this, Sterling said finally, but watching you with them, seeing the mother you become in just 1 year, it makes me understand how much I really stole from all of us. You can't undo it, but you can keep showing up, keep being honest, keep putting them first. I will, for the rest of my life. I believed him. 9 years ago, Sterling Morrison destroyed me. He told me my children were dead and let me grieve while building a life without me. He stole the most precious gift I'd ever been given. But I survived. I built myself back stronger, sharper, more resilient than I'd ever been. I created a company worth millions. I became someone who commanded respect and admiration. And then impossibly, I got my children back. Not the babies I'd lost, but the boys they'd become. Brilliant and funny and kind and complicated. Perfect in their imperfection. They looked like me. Everyone could see it now. The resemblance that had once been a shocking revelation was now just a fact. Owen had my artistic soul. Felix had my analytical mind. Miles had my empathy and observation. But more importantly, they were becoming themselves. 3 individual people with their own dreams and fears and personalities. They were mine. Not because I'd given birth to them, though I had. Not because DNA said so, though it did. But because I'd fought for them, chosen them every single day since finding them again, showed up even when it was hard. And that was a love no one could ever steal. 1 year and 2 months after the gala, on a random Tuesday morning, Felix woke me up at 6 a.m. with an urgent question about whether quantum physics proved parallel universes existed. "This is your question at 6 in the morning?" I mumbled, barely awake. "I've been thinking about it all night." He was completely serious. "If parallel universes exist, is there one where we always knew you were our mom?" The question was so pure, so heartbreaking, so perfectly Felix that I pulled him into bed with me. Maybe. But in this universe, we found each other, and that's pretty amazing too. I guess so. He settled against my shoulder. "I'm glad this is the universe I'm in." "Me too, baby. Me too." Within minutes, Owen appeared wanting to show me a painting he'd been working on in secret. Then Miles showed up with a new story he'd written. Then the dog needed to go out. Then someone burned toast. Then Felix and Owen were arguing about whether cereal counted as soup. This was my life now. Chaos and noise and constant needs and questions and messes. It was everything I'd ever wanted. That afternoon, I had a video call with my leadership team at the company. We were discussing a potential acquisition that would double our valuation. This is exactly what we've been working toward. My CFO was excited. This puts us in position for serious growth, maybe even an IPO in 2 years. I listened to the projections, the analysis, the opportunities, and then I heard myself say something I never expected. I want to restructure my role, move from CEO to chairman of the board, bring in a president to handle day-to-day operations. The screen went silent. Genevieve, are you sure? My CFO looked concerned. This is your company, your vision, and it will continue to be. But I have 3 boys who need me present, not just available. I've spent 5 years building this company while running from grief. Now I want to build a life while running toward joy. That's beautiful. My marketing director had tears in her eyes. And honestly, it might be the smartest business decision you've ever made. A founder who knows when to step back. That's rare. The transition happened over the next 3 months. I found an exceptional president who shared my vision but brought fresh perspective. I remained chairman, still involved in strategy and direction, but freed from the daily grind that had consumed my life for 5 years. It felt like coming up for air after being underwater for too long. With more flexibility in my schedule, I started attending every school event, every soccer game, art show, science fair, parent-teacher conference. I volunteered in Miles' classroom. I joined the PTA. I became one of those parents I'd once observed with envy, the ones who seemed to have everything figured out. I didn't have everything figured out, but I was present, and that mattered more. Sterling and I fell into an easy co-parenting rhythm that surprised both of us. Weekly dinners with the boys where we both showed up, coordinated responses to school issues, unified front on discipline and expectations. We'd even started attending family therapy together, not as a couple, but as parents learning to navigate our complicated situation. The therapist asked me once if I'd forgiven Sterling. I don't know if forgiveness is the right word. I'd considered the question carefully. I've accepted what happened. I've chosen to work with him for our son's sake. But forgiven? That feels too simple for something this complex. What would forgiveness look like for you? It would look like me not flinching when someone mentions the year the boys were born. It would look like me not calculating all the moments I missed. It would look like peace instead of just the absence of active anger. You're not there yet. No. But I'm not stuck anymore either. And that feels like progress. 2 years after the gala, on the boys' 11th birthday, we threw a joint party at my house. Kids from their school, family members, even Barbara, who'd slowly been working her way back into our lives with genuine humility. Sterling helped me set up decorations while the boys were at their morning activities. Thank you. He said it quietly while hanging streamers, for letting me be part of this, for not shutting me out of their lives the way I shut you out. They love you. That's not conditional on my feelings. Still, you could make this harder. Instead, you've made it easier. I did that for them, not for you. I know. That's what makes it remarkable. We worked in silence for a while. Have you started dating? He asked suddenly. The boys mentioned you had dinner with someone named Andrew. Andrew is a colleague. It was a business dinner. But you could. Date, I mean. You should. I'm not ready. Maybe someday. But right now, I'm focused on being their mom and running my company and figuring out who I am when I'm not defined by trauma. That's fair. What about you? I'm seeing someone. Casually. She's a teacher, actually. Nothing serious yet, but the boys like her. That's good. Is it weird? Him moving on, building a new life, while I was still sorting through the wreckage of our past. Maybe a little, but mostly I just hoped he'd learn from his mistakes. That he'd be honest with this new woman in ways he'd never been with Patricia, or, toward the end, with me. The boys arrived home, and the house exploded with 11-year-old energy. Cake and presents and games and laughter. At one point, I stood back and watched them. Owen, now almost as tall as me, his artistic talent recognized by a prestigious art program. Felix, already taking high school math, his scientific mind constantly asking why. Miles, quietly observing everything, his stories getting published in youth literary magazines. They'd survived the revelation of their origin story. They'd adapted to having 2 parents, 2 homes, 2 different approaches to life. They'd integrated the truth into their identity without letting it define them. They were resilient, strong, whole. Mom. Miles appeared beside me. Are you crying again? Happy tears. These are happy tears. You cry a lot for someone who's happy. I spent 9 years not crying because I was too broken. Now I cry because I'm healing. He considered this with his typical thoughtfulness. I'm glad you're healing. Me too, sweetheart. As the party wound down and friends went home, we gathered in the living room for family cake. Just the 5 of us. Me, Sterling, and the boys. Owen made a wish and blew out his candles. "What did you wish for?" Felix asked immediately. "Can't tell, or it won't come true. That's statistically unsupported," Felix argued. "The wish is just symbolic anyway." "But symbols matter," Miles interjected. "They help us believe in possibilities." I caught Sterling's eye over their heads, and we shared a moment of perfect understanding. These boys, these brilliant, argumentative, wonderful boys, ours, his and mine, no matter how complicated the path that brought us here. Later, after Sterling left and the boys were in bed, I sat in the reading loft Miles had claimed as his favorite space. Phoenix, the dog, curled up beside me. The house was quiet except for the settling sounds of old wood and new memories. My phone buzzed with a text from Claudia. "Saw the birthday photos on social media. Those boys are getting so big. You're an amazing mom, General." Another text, this one from my company president. "Board meeting agenda for next week attached. Also, happy birthday to the boys. You've built something beautiful, both at work and at home." And one more, surprisingly, from Barbara. "Thank you for including me today. The boys are remarkable young men, and I'm beginning to understand that's because of you. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. I read that last message 3 times. It wasn't absolution. It wasn't enough to erase 9 years of stolen motherhood. But it was something. Acknowledgement. The beginning of accountability. I thought about the woman I'd been 9 years ago. Broken and grieving, believing herself worthless because she couldn't carry a pregnancy to term without complications. Believing herself a failure because her husband had told her so. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who'd built a multi-million-dollar company, someone who'd survived psychological torture and come out fighting, someone who'd reclaimed her children and rebuilt her life, someone who'd learned that you don't have to forgive to move forward, that you can hold people accountable while still choosing peace, that love for your children can be stronger than hatred for those who hurt you. I'd become the woman I needed to be, not despite the betrayal, but because of it. Because surviving the unsurvivable had shown me exactly how strong I could be. And now, finally, I was using that strength not to build walls, but to build a family. It wasn't the family I'd imagined 11 years ago when I was pregnant and hopeful and naive. It was messier, more complicated, scarred in places, but it was real, and it was mine. And that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something real and true, I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that like button. Subscribe to Love and Twilights with Dr. Phillips. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that survival is possible, that strength comes from the darkest places, that truth, no matter how painful, is always worth fighting for. Drop a comment telling me what you learned from Genevieve's story. How would you handle discovering your children were alive after years of grief? Could you co-parent with someone who betrayed you so deeply? What does forgiveness mean to you? I read every single comment, and your perspectives matter. They help build a community of people who believe in second chances, in fighting for truth, in the power of love over bitterness. Remember this, sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the greatest pain. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are capable of change. Sometimes families are broken and mended again, and still worth fighting for. And sometimes the children we think we've lost are exactly where we're meant to find them, looking back at us with our own eyes, waiting to come home. This is Dr. Phillips, reminding you that love always finds a way, that mothers will fight through hell for their children, that truth always wins in the end. Until next time, keep believing in redemption, keep fighting for what matters, keep choosing love, even when hate would be easier, because in the end, love is the only thing that survives. Love is the only thing that matters. Love is the only thing that heals. Thank you for being part of this journey. I'll see you in the next story.